The sun was a molten coin sinking into the endless flat horizon, the kind of sunset that painted the dust-red plains of Texas in blood and fire. Out here, miles from the nearest real town, the air carried the dry, metallic scent of old earth and dying grass. The two-lane road I drove along was cracked, faded, and lonely, flanked by barbed wire fences and skeletal mesquite trees. It had been hours since I'd passed another car. The radio in my old Ford pickup had given up on catching a signal somewhere back near Abilene, leaving me with the hollow hum of wind through the vents and the occasional rattle from something loose under the dashboard. I was headed to a place called Hollow Bend, a town so small it barely showed up on maps, where an uncle I barely remembered had left me an old farmhouse in his will. I didn't know why he'd left it to me or why I hadn't heard from him in years, but I figured I'd drive out, take a look, and see if it was worth keeping Dot by the time the sky had gone deep purple. The road had narrowed into a ribbon of cracked asphalt, weaving through patches of prairie and shadowed thickets of cedar. That was when I noticed the first odd thing, a telephone pole standing at an angle, its wires hanging slack, swaying slightly though there was no wind. Beneath it, half hidden in the grass, lay the rusted carcass of an old sedan. No signs of a wreck, no broken glass, just sitting there like it had been abandoned decades ago. I drove past, watching it shrink in my rearview mirror, but a creeping unease stayed with me. The night out here was different, darker somehow, the stars sharp and cold above, and the land stretching into blackness without end. It was close to midnight when I reached Hollow Bend. Calling it a town was generous. A handful of weathered buildings huddled along a single main street, their windows dark except for a flickering neon beer sign in the corner store. The air smelled faintly of stagnant water, and somewhere in the distance a dog barked, the sound echoing unnaturally. I rolled down my window to ask an old man sitting on a bench for directions, but he just stared at me, his face pale in the dim streetlight, eyes wide and glassy. His lips moved, but I couldn't hear anything. When I leaned closer, I realized he wasn't speaking at all, just moving his mouth soundlessly, like he was trying to form words he couldn't say. The farmhouse was another 10 minutes down a dirt road that wound through fields of tall, dry grass. I found it sitting alone under a sagging oak, the wood of its porch gray and splintered, windows clouded with grime. The front door creaked open before I even touched it. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something else, an undercurrent of rot that made my stomach twist. The furniture was all there, as if someone had just gotten up and left, but it was coated in a film of neglect. A single bulb swung gently from the ceiling, casting shadows that seemed too deep, as if the corners of the room were swallowing the light. I explored the place room by room. In the kitchen, plates still sat in the sink, their edges rimmed with brown stains. The fridge was unplugged but carried the sour tang of something long dead. Upstairs, I found a bedroom with a single bed, its blanket neatly made, and a knit stand, holding a cracked glass of water. The strangest thing was the mirror above the dresser. It wasn't dusty like everything else. In fact, it was spotless, and when I looked into it, I could swear the reflection of the room behind me didn't quite match. The shadows moved differently, slower, like something was waiting there. That night, I lay in the bed upstairs, listening to the groan of the house as the wind picked up. Sometime after 1, I woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, heavy. They stopped outside my door. I held my breath, waiting, but the door never opened. When I finally worked up the courage to look, the hall was empty, though the floorboards were still gently creaking, as if someone had just stepped away. The next morning, I drove back into Hollow Bend for supplies, but the store was closed, though. I could see someone standing inside behind the counter, unmoving. The same old man from the night before was still on the bench, in the same position, his mouth still moving silently. I tried speaking to him, even shaking his shoulder, but his skin was cold and stiff. I backed away fast, got in my truck, and drove off without looking back. When I returned to the farmhouse, the front door was wide open again. I knew I had closed it. Inside, the air was colder, and the mirror upstairs seemed to have grown darker, as if the glass was deep water instead of a reflection. That night, I dreamed of the old man standing at the foot of my bed, lips moving, in that silent rhythm. I woke to find my bedsheets damp, my ears ringing with a faint, distant whisper I couldn't quite make out. On the third day, I decided to leave. I packed my bag, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside only to find the dirt road gone. In its place stretched endless prairie in every direction, no tire tracks, no fences, no sign of the town. The sky was wrong too, a pale, washed-out gray without sun or clouds. I turned back toward the farmhouse, and that's when I saw the figures. In the distance, dozens of them, standing perfectly still, all with pale faces and moving lips. As they began walking toward me, I realized they weren't making any sound at all. The silence was so complete it pressed against my ears. I ran inside and locked the door, though I knew it wouldn't matter. From upstairs, the mirror was glowing. Faintly, the glass rippling like water. I could hear something on the other side now, a voice, low and urgent, calling my name over and over. I don't know why I stepped closer. Maybe because it sounded almost familiar. The last thing I remember is touching the surface. It was cold, but it gave way under my fingers like skin. Something pulled from the other side, hard. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The world tilted, and the farmhouse faded into blackness. If someone finds this, if they find the farmhouse, don't go inside. Don't touch the mirror. And if you see Hollow Bend on a map, know this: it's not supposed to be there.